Everybody, good morning. Is there some echo in there? Okay, well, anyway, we're gonna try to do this. This is a special meeting of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We're also sitting as all special taxing districts, and this is the August 13, 2020, 9 a.m. meeting. This was my call to order. Board members can attend or will attend in person, by telephone, or remotely via electronic conferencing. Everybody seems to be here, so this is a special session, and the first thing we have in the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led this morning by Supervisor McLeod.
Thank you, sir. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item in the agenda is called Call to the Public. Call to the Public is held for the public's benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and a decision at a future date. Anyone who's concerned about COVID-19 and does not want to be put into an open setting can submit an email to call to the or a call to the public statement at publiccomment@yumacountyaz.gov. These email forms of public comment will be accepted until 8 a.m. the morning of the meeting. All public comments will be read aloud during the Yuma County Board of Supervisors meeting that starts at 9 a.m. Desiree, do we have any comments? We don't have any email comments. We'll move on to the discussion and action item this morning, where the board will open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. First item is recorder elections. Certify the official results for the August 4, 2020 primary election pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 16-622, and declare the nomination of the candidates who received the largest numbers of votes for each political party pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 16-645A. Oh, Mary's already up here. Mary Fontes, yeah, you can start us off, Mary, by telling us how well this election went.
Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Chairman, members of the board. Mary Fontes, Election Director for the county. This was my first big election. The presidential preference election, of course, was a lot smaller because it was only one party. This was three parties, even though the Libertarian Party is not recognized in Yuma County. It is recognized among the states, so therefore we had three different party ballots, and then we had some nonpartisan ballots for the local jurisdictions. May I take off my mask?
Sure. Let me just emphasize something for the public who's listening. The meeting is set up so that there is already enough distancing between people so that not wearing a mask is somewhat safe. I never feel safe next to Supervisor McLeod, so it could be 12 feet and I still wouldn't feel safe, but it is designed that way. So yes, we wear a mask because we want to give people the idea, and we want to plant on the idea of wearing a mask no matter what, but there is safety measures taken, Mary, so you can't speak without a mask.
Thank you very much. We had a 26.10% turnout. I have not had the opportunity to compare that to previous elections. Previous primary elections. I was discussing that with Robin, and we want to come up with some type of chart that records those statistics so that we have them. But in this case, it was a 26.10% turnout. Hopefully in the future, our turnout will be higher. I don't know if it's because people were concerned about COVID.
It's a primary. There wasn't that much competition in it.
Yeah, that's true also. For this election, there were not very many contested races at all. So I don't know if you want me to go over all the races.
No.
Okay.
No, we don't want you. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Now, I do have a question. It's about the local elections, the ones in Somerton and the ones in San Luis and the ones in Welton. There is a formula, and Robin explained it to me. I keep forgetting the formula, but it's supposed to be somewhat simple. But what happens in an election in a town where more than, say there's 3 positions, but 4 people are over the 50 plus 1? What happens then? Does it go down the list to the highest vote getters?
I believe, according to the statute, it looks like it goes to the highest votes, the people who got the most votes. However, It could vary. I don't know. I don't believe the 3 jurisdictions that had elections this time have a charter like Yuma County did, because a charter can change the way that they calculate results. But I believe it goes to the top 3 vote getters as long as they're all over the 50%. So the calculation is you take the total number of votes cast, you divide it by the number of seats, and then you divide that in half. And then anybody who's more than 50% over that would be deemed elected. And then if there's 4 that come over that 0.5% or the half mark, I believe that the top 3 do not have to move on. There's no general election. That's my belief. It is up to the city to make that determination.
That's what I thought. I just wondered whether that, because every once in a while it happens, and I think it happened in San Luis, and it might have happened in Somerton, where you had more than the number of positions available, you had more than the number of those individuals or candidates that had more than 50%. So
I was looking at, I actually looked at that a little bit, because I think it was either Somerton or Welton that I felt, uh-oh, are we going to have a
recount?
Well, yeah, that too.
I like those, but just my personal feelings about them.
I think it was Welton, because if you look at the votes cast for the Jones, it's the last page of the canvas. Jones, Davidson, and Smith, they're all very, very close. And it was a vote for 2. However, the difference has to be 10, for a recount, the difference has to be 10 votes or less. And there is not that disparity. But I was watching that race. It was kind of interesting to watch.
I know there's a reason, Mary, but when I look at 160 early ballots being rejected, I know it's not a large number considering that the number of people that voted. But when you go to a general and you have 3 times as many people voting, I'm really concerned that number would go up to like 400, 500, and it would mean something in an election like that. So what's the process? The rejection rate. What's the rejection rate? Is it a 1%? Is it less than that? Is it more than that?
I think it's going to be less than that, because there were 25,089 ballots cast. There were only 2,060 some odd that showed up at the polls. So you're talking 23,000 early ballots compared to 160 rejected. That's
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when the races aren't that close. But for example, if the number of ballots that were rejected were from a single precinct or from a single section or from a single district,
right,
they could have a bearing on the results. You mentioned Welton, which was like 15, 20 votes difference. If there was more than 20 votes rejected in that area, that may give that candidate, the losing candidate, some sort of claim that, look, why? And I think that what I'm getting at is it's an educational process. We need to let people know the reasons why their ballots are getting rejected, as a sort of a public announcement type statement. If you don't sign it, well, if you sign it, if you get a notice to come, please come, otherwise you ballot. In other words, we want to make sure that people, especially because we're now going to a lot of mail-in ballots, early ballots, and the process is an educational process. A lot of people may be using it for the first time. They may not be totally aware that there is this checking process. Early balloting is not new to Yuma County, I should know, but it may be new to some of the voters that are using it now. So, I would suggest that, that you have an educational process between now and election day, telling people, look, be careful about this, about that. Did some of those ballots get in late, or are those ballots that were reviewed? Because, I'm concerned about the post office, for example, not delivering ballots until Wednesday or Thursday or something. All right.
Members of the board,
those are the early rejected.
So none of these numbers will reflect anything that was received after 7 p.m. on election night.
They don't have it.
So all of which these were received over a 27-day period, but I wanted to comment that these particular reasons for rejection were all communicated to the voters in a couple of different ways. So There were letters sent for each individual scenario to each individual voter. And then thereafter, there were a phone calls attempted. So if we had a phone call or a phone number for the particular voter, those phone calls were made. There were, it's kind of a living number throughout the 27 days because this number was oftentimes higher, oftentimes lower. Every time that ballots came in through the mail, they were kind of triaged, if you will, to go through that process. So in addition to the statutory requirement for contact with these individual voters, we've modified the voter instructions that you'll see in November to try to highlight this piece in the instruction, because the number of ones that weren't signed, for instance, it's oftentimes we aren't aware of why, but there are some communications from voters that I didn't sign it because I have registered now in another county, or I'm moving and I sent the ballot back. And then ones that did not sign, that just simply forgot, we want to afford them the opportunity to show up at the vote center. So we also need to look at which of these voters resolved this particular issue at a vote center. A few years back, we changed the procedure so that if you were falling in one of these categories, you didn't necessarily have to come in and address it with an early ballot. You could show up in person on Tuesday. So we probably need to assess that. But we will make note of an opportunity for public outreach about these particular concerns. This is much lower than we've seen in the past. We have been concerned about the no voter signature, which was the reason behind the envelope redesign we talked about previously.
Yeah. No, and I am, again, I've seen the department, both the recorder's office and the election department, move and, adjust as the numbers have increased. But this is a particularly interesting election because of all the turmoil surrounding it, because of COVID, because of, the national stage. So and I haven't filled in a registration form for a long time. So are we asking people for their email now, or are we not? When we fill in the registration form?
It is part of the voter registration form.
It is?
It is not.
Because, social media, emails, people, some people don't even have a regular phone anymore, so you can't call them at home.
Well, Chairman Rice, members of the board, that is asked on the registration form, but it isn't public record. It is able to be used for the
For contacting purposes.
for the educational information pamphlet or for contact. We haven't had a lot of success with contact on the emails, but we have had a lot of success on the envelope redesign and highlighting why we're asking for a phone number. Oftentimes voters do not want to put their phone number for fear of marketing calls or whatnot, but it's not that we put on there now. We're asking in case there's an issue with this ballot. So that's where we found some success with that. We're also looking into a program that will track the particular ballot. So a person can get on a application and track where their ballot went and what ended up happening. Nice. Not just at the end when we received it and a determination has been made, but there's also what we've used in the past. In 2016, we used texting, and sometimes that was successful. Sometimes we got not very nice notes back, but the texting, I think, could help us in this.
Do we have a social platform, media platform for the elections department by itself?
Chairman Rice, members of the board, no, we do not. We coordinate that with your communications division.
Yeah, well, you should, because now that's become a pretty...
It's a lot of work.
I know it's a lot of work, but I think it's a lot of us old folks, have a difficult time sometimes understanding just how powerful that tool is. But the new generation, I tell you, my 14-year-old, if you took her phone, if you took her laptop, she wouldn't know what to do. And for me, I you can take those two and I'll still be alive and I'll function somewhat. But for her, for the new generation, for the millennials, that's become the way they act, the way they interact with people. So,
Chairman Rice, members of the board, I wanted to highlight one thing in regard to the web information or social media. We are having our post-primary election meeting today with staff for several hours, and one of the things that will be addressed is simplifying some of the pieces on the web page for both offices if you're dealing with voter registration or elections, and really integrate all of that to make sure you're going to one place. We're also looking into a very easy web name to have that redirect immediately to Yuma County's website that should give some information on election information and simplified information. It's a very, you could go on with pages of election information. So we're really trying to pull out just the pieces that would be most beneficial to a voter and try to highlight those. I'll send Susan a note later that perhaps she could share with all of you on the URL we're looking at. We're hoping to use it on a public outreach campaign with different billboards around town starting now so that we can reach more people on where to get the information. And I think that would actually help with staff too on minimizing calls that could be answered by looking at the information on the website. And
I wish, okay, go ahead.
go ahead.
You finish? I wish I could say this is the last question because I don't know who else is going to ask some questions, but do we have a link to the Secretary of State website on our, on our election result situation?
We do.
We do?
I don't know if it's contained within the results, the election night reporting software that the communications office maintains, but it is in a couple different areas of our web pages. In regard to looking to what the status of your ballot is or voter registration, it automatically pulls you into the Secretary of State's website. And I think that's one of the easier ways to go track a ballot in a little bit different than us doing it, or voter registration updates. So.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask is because most of our districts involve voting outside Yuma County. And so therefore, you may be looking at a result from a local race thinking, oh, so-and-so made it. But then you have to add, the rest of the district, right, which is in Avondale and Buckeye, or it's in Gila Bend. And, if you don't link it and see it, you may be thinking, well, she did well or he did well. And then all of a sudden you look and, oh, well, she did well in Yuma County. But so, providing a link and the result page would probably be something that most people would appreciate, so that they don't have to go back to the regular website and look through there to find the link for the Secretary of State to continue checking results statewide. So if you work with our IT people and they're still being able to modify that web page, work with Kevin to try to see if we can make it easier, because there's a disconnect with old folks like me who can't simply just follow things. The easier you make it, the easier it's going to be for us to follow through with it. Okay. Now, any questions from the rest of the board before we canvass the votes? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and certify the official results from the August 4, 2020 primary, and declare the nomination of the candidates who received the largest number of votes for each political party pursuant to Arizona revised statute. Last question. We're not certifying the results for the local elections, right? They do that themselves?
That is correct.
Right? So this is just the county or state or federal, whatever, we certify just our portion of it through here? Although everything that is in the canvassing here includes those numbers, we're really not certifying them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve, to certify the results of the 2020 primary election, August 4th. Anybody has any more questions? No questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, ladies, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Chairman Reyes, members of the board, I just wanted to mention one more thing to let you know. We just did a quick calculation. We're working on charts and stats to show a progression of the last, say, decade or 15 years of elections in regard to ballots cast and percentage of turnout. In the 2016 primary, we only had 22% turnout. We had a lot less registered voters. But I do think it's pretty interesting that we had about 7,000 ballots more this cycle than we did in the 2016 primary, most of which was early ballots. But even though our increase in voter registration raised by 20,000 people, our percentage of turnout was nicely sitting at a 4% increase. So that's interesting.
I always say you quit while you're ahead, but the last thing that I want to make a comment on is the what's called the update process. You know, and I know that you and I talked about it, and that you will provide us with, in the future election, you will provide us with an update process so that people know when to expect updates and the results. Taking 7 days or 8 days to provide an update, it's not really something that I think most candidates will be comfortable with. Normally they work 3 months, 4 months, 6 months to election day, and obviously it takes some time. But I understand the process. I just want to make sure that people know what to expect next time, when to expect some updates, okay?
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, Ms. Fontes has prepared a calendar for the tabulation updates for the general election. And when we come to the board with the complete comprehensive review or update on elections at the end of August or perhaps in September, that will include the calendar that includes 6 different dates for the tabulation update. So we've tackled that yesterday. So
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Robin. Good job.
Thank you.
Overall. You know, I hate to give people a 10 because they have nothing to look forward to. So you guys get like an 8. So there's still a couple of points to improve. All right. The next item in the agenda is for county administration is discussion and possible action to support University of Arizona Yuma COVID-19 Early Warning Protection Project. You know, okay. So who's going to take this up? Are you going to introduce the item, and then we'll let Mr. Brinkley?
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, at our last board meeting, the board had asked for this to be placed on the agenda for potential contribution by explanation of what the project is and potential contribution toward the project. So I'll turn it over to Paul Brierly from the Yuma Center of Excellence for Desert Agriculture.
Thank you. Chairman Reyes, members of the board, thank you for fitting this in this special meeting. It's a timely topic, so I think this is really nice to be able to fit it in now. I know the chairman loves long PowerPoints. So,
yeah, I do, and while I sleep, but you know, when I'm awake, I don't.
I have a lot of information crammed in here. I'm going to go pretty quickly to that point, but feel free to stop me and ask questions as we go or at the end. But I did want to bring to your attention and make a request of a project that we are hoping to undertake, and it has to do with COVID detection, early detection. So you're all well aware of the news. COVID's been a terrible thing to deal with. It's been hitting pretty close to home with Yuma being one of the national hotspots. Next door in California, we find that the agricultural counties are some of the highest infection rates. And we see the meatpacking plants where they've had to shut down due to the spread through the workforce. So it's very pertinent what happens here as we head into our season of vegetable production and all the labor crews that are out working the fields and everything else. The question is, if you had advance warning of an outbreak, if you knew a week before people started to show symptoms, would that be helpful? Could you do something to slow the spread if you had that advance warning? University of Arizona has been a significant contributor to COVID. They've done a lot of efforts in testing and technologies and producing PPEs, just all sorts of things. And we at the Yuma Center of Excellence are working to help reduce the impacts on our community and on the agricultural workforce. But just real quick, for those of you that don't know, the Yuma Center of Excellence is a U of A organization. I work directly for the Dean of the College of Agriculture. He's also the Vice President for Agriculture, Life, and Veterinary Sciences and Cooperative Extension. But we're a public-private partnership. So we're funded by the ag industry and advised by them on what kind of projects we should work on. So basically I have one foot in the ag industry and one foot in the university. We work closely with both. It also gives us a lot of flexibility as to what we work on and how we get things done. So we had a contribution, a donation from Jesus Tovar at TMP Farms in Somerton. And he basically was asking, is there some way that you can help Yuma County get back to work with this outbreak and safely get back to work? Pretty broad charge, but we brainstormed. I brainstormed a lot with Shane Burgess, the dean, and we thought of a lot of different ways that we could help Yuma County, maybe with better information, better testing. The thing we settled on was a system that's being done at U of A and other places that tests wastewater and detects the infection in wastewater. So the point being, well, I'm going to get into explaining it, but again, it gives you that 7-day, a week or so head start before people show symptoms at knowing that there's an outbreak happening. So we decided that was a good thing to pursue. And then we realized, to do that, we were going to have to send samples to Tucson. That was going to be costly. That was going to be time. That was going to add time to the. If you're trying to get a 7-day advance warning, it doesn't make sense to lose a day or more sending it. So we looked into the ability to set up a lab here locally, and that seems to be very doable with the cooperation of the Yuma Agricultural Center, the Arizona Experiment Station. And once we thought that we might do that, then we thought, well, if we got a lab here locally, why wouldn't we make it available to the broader community? So that was our thinking process and how we arrived here today. I'm going to show a few slides about the process itself. It's being done at the West Center, which is a U of A facility that's co-located with a wastewater treatment plant in Tucson. They've been doing this. It's basically they take wastewater, they do quite a few processes to it with centrifuges and filters and everything else to prepare the samples, and then they do a fairly standard PCR, real-time PCR tests to determine not just, first they determine if there's virus in the sample, and then they're also determining they're quantifying it, so how much is in it, and they're working and making good progress on actually being able to correlate that amount to what does that mean as far as number of people infected. That's the process. You could call it sewage surveillance. It's now called wastewater-based epidemiology, just to sound a little fancier. But you're monitoring the whole community, whatever that community is. And I use the word community in quotes because that community may be a whole city, or it may be a school, or it may be a military base, or it may be a farm crew. But you're testing everybody, whether they have health insurance, whether they don't, whether they're showing symptoms, whether they don't, whether they're seeking medical care or not. You're getting a true picture of what's happening out there. And again, it's a 7-day advance, so you've got some time. Tells you, is the virus here? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? What's happening? I put in quotes there, a little tagline, poop doesn't lie. I mean, you're not asking people
I
questions.
don't know about that, so.
But this is not a new technology. It was done even back with polio, and it's sensitive enough to test to signal if one person in 10,000 has the infection. So what can you do with it? Again, if the numbers are increasing as you test, you know that the pandemic is getting worse. If they're decreasing, you know you're on the way down. And this is a week or more ahead, so you can take action with that, right? You could, there's different things you can do. I've worked with Diana Gomez at the County Health Department to talk about that. What would the protocols be? You can increase education in an area so that they do better at social distancing and things like that. You could increase testing. You could get more supplies out, PPEs and sanitation. You could prepare the hospitals so that they're ready for an onslaught, because what we do know is when the rate increases on this testing, in a week or two, you're going to see more people in the hospital. You can also figure out if things are working, if the efforts that you're taking to try to minimize the spread are working, because you can track whether it's going up or down. This is just an example. This particular lab that we're working with, or entity that we're working with, the West Center, they've been tasked by the president of the University of Arizona to be part of their school reentry plan, the university reentry plan. So as people come back, students come back, they're going to be testing every dormitory and watching for outbreaks within that dormitory community. And this is how they're going to respond. They have different levels on the left that they test, and then they correspond that with a level of concern. They'll either know that there's no need to respond to do anything different because rates are fine, or when it starts to show They may do enhanced cleaning, enhanced education to try to get people to do better at the practices that we know need to be done. If it increases from there to a level 2, they'll maybe do some random testing to get an actual, because again, this is classified as environmental testing because it's not testing individuals. It's testing the environment, so to speak. So then if you want to act on that, you could test individuals, and if it gets bad enough, you may want to test everybody so that you get the people in quarantine that are spreading it. And again, with this 7-day advance notice, you could potentially test people who have not shown any symptoms. So during that time that they would have been spreading the disease, you can let them know, you've got it, you need to quarantine. So I mentioned putting communities in quotes. These are some of the ones we've thought of here that would be a community, a municipality, a school, a student dormitory, a military base, maybe a tribal nation, all the way down to, as I mentioned, the work crews. And with the work crews, what it is, as you know, they travel on a bus, they have their porta potties with them, they use that during the day. And so if you tested that porta potty, you would actually know that that 30-person work crew had somebody who was now positive. And instead of them spending a week spreading it to their 30-person work crew, you could have them all tested, or at least you could sanitize the bus, sanitize the outhouse, have them really strictly follow the social distancing. Different ways you can respond. And again, we've worked with Diana at the County Health Department to look into that. I think I just described this. So this is basically what we envisioned with the farm worker testing. And again, it's timely because as they get into September, October, we're going to start having all those crews traveling in buses, working closely together, and we would really hate for that to spread and become like the meatpacking industry where all of a sudden you have trouble getting labor to harvest the crops. It certainly impacts all of Yuma County and the economy here, not to mention our citizens. So what we're proposing is that that our center work with the West Center to set up a lab here at the Yuma Agricultural Center. It would be under their guidance because they're experts at this. They're experienced at this. And with that, we could provide results for testing from the ag industry, other industries, municipalities, the schools. Like I say, this could be a big part of the schools reopening. The governor's wanting to get schools open as soon as possible. Well, and there's obviously concern from parents and students and teachers. So if part of that was that, hey, we're going to be testing each school to see if there's an outbreak coming and deal with that, that may make people feel more comfortable going back to school. And we're hopeful that funding for this could come from the different entities out there that want to support this, such as yourselves, such as the state government, as part of the school reopening plan maybe, the cities, military installations. Yuma Proving Ground has expressed an interest. And we kind of see this as a pilot project, although like I say, it is proven technology, but if a community like Yuma were to do this successfully, this could be replicated really anywhere. I mean, you could picture Imperial Valley, you could picture Salinas Valley. It doesn't even have to be connected with ag. And it could be that this, is a type of a spin-off startup business that someone would take and run with to provide that service. So all said and done, for a year of setting up the lab, manning the lab with personnel, all the equipment and the consumables that every test requires, if we were to do 100 samples a week for a full year, put all that together would be just over $1 million. And we figured that funding could come from both donations and contracts for testing, and like I say, just sort of a per test fee. Put that all together, depending on what kind of support we get. But again, it's really nice to be here at this time, because if we were to get support from you, we're suggesting $220,000. That would give us the money to start the lab tomorrow. I mean.
Oh, before you move on, I mean, somebody should have warned you. Yuma County cannot make donations. So, you know, we're not, you know, we're,
We don't know that yet.
oh, we do know that. For
Okay.
22 years, I've been told we can't make donations, that we have to do something else. But donations we can't make of the public, you know, of public funds. So we would participate in a program. I mean, we can call it something else, just we can't call it a donation.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I didn't know the answer to that, so I put two ways that it could be done. One is a donation, because I did find out on our end, because my understanding is Yuma County itself wouldn't be wanting to do any testing, so it could be a donation if that was something you guys could do. If not, we can do it through what's called sponsored projects at the university. It would be like a
Yeah, we
contract.
could do it as a health department pilot project,
Yeah,
participating with the university. We'd find a way to do it. It's
Right.
just that we can't call it a donation.
It's very doable, and I figured one of those two, not knowing for sure
All right.
which would be better for you. So, yeah, and that's the second bullet there, either as a donation or as a sponsored
contract.
project. And we've got support at the highest levels of the university for this project, a lot of excitement, and so I've had better people than me working on this to figure out, make sure this is, you know, make sure I know what I'm talking about when I tell you. So,
Okay.
so yeah, we've got it worked out where that can work fine.
Okay.
So that's my presentation.
Well, I was scared. I thought you were going to go through all the data that you put in here, you know, with the percentage of fecal matter versus molecular level stuff. I was going, oh, Jesus, I hope I'm going to glaze over with that one.
I'm not smart enough
But
to do
thank
that.
you very much for keeping it, you know, simple. So the basic simple concept here is that you guys would try to put together a $1 million project, and that you would like the support of Yuma County to the tune of maybe a couple $100,000 to sort of seed the project a little bit more than just a simple contribution from a small farming, you know. And the idea is to basically create a program, a pilot program that will help us identify somewhat. And I go back to this because to me, the problem is with, for example, contact tracing, has always been the fact that the time factor, that when you take a test or when you get the results, is so long that by the time you get the result, that person who's infected has already been in contact with too many people. And in the fields, that's even worse. They're in the same bus, they're working together, they're working, I mean, if you work, you can't, sometimes you wear a mask and you just can't handle it. You know, some people have problems with the mask. So rapid testing to me was it's a very interesting concept if you can put it in play, like the NBA or like you can create a bubble where people work in a bubble, but that's not going to be possible with people who live across the border and walk every day to get to the fields. The problem is you could do a test today, they're going to go back home and nothing comes in the test, and they come in the next day. So you would have to test basically every day to get a really good sense. And I appreciate the fact that what we're dealing with here is creating a lab, you know, locally that can handle this testing relatively fast, because to me a 7-day lag or even a 3-day lag is too long for containment purposes. You know, I mean, I don't even know how to answer a question when they tell me, have you been out of the country the last 14 days? Because if you step into Mexico, you're out of the country. So, you know, it's kind of difficult in a border area to really get a sense of what's going on, other than the fact that it's like an audit. It's a point in time. And it's an early warning system that you may have, and that's the key to me, that you would have an early warning system. And if it was just for COVID, I'd have a problem with that, because I think that there's a point where COVID will become like the flu or some of the other illnesses that we have a vaccine for. But if it's a testing system that can be adapted for other sicknesses as they appear, then I think you got a point here, that testing, you know, when I read the presentation, I realized it's not just a localized issue. If it works well, it can be used other places. And, you know, because U of A is such an advanced, progressive type of university in this kind of situations, and because we do have a very specific problem with farming here, as it being one of the largest industries, if not the largest industry, and I've seen that with issues with fecal matter in the fields, and I've seen so many changes over the years about how do we keep, you know, contamination from fields and stuff. So I think Yuma County does have a reputation, and it's in part by people like you, that that we deal with some of these issues pretty fast and that we are making the situation better for not only the workers, but also for the general public. So I do feel that there's something to it. Now, when Supervisor McLeod brought the project up, because he did bring the project up, he did limit it to a certain amount, which I now find it is within that amount, because when I first read the total project budget of $1 million, if I had hair, my hair would have raised up, and I'm going like, what, we're putting together $1 million project now? But I do understand this is not gonna be just Yuma County. It's supposed to be Yuma County and the rest of the industry, somehow connected to the industry. Hold on a minute. I think that Supervisor Pancrasi had her hand or her eyes lift up.
I know. The agriculture industry is top of the chart, but also education, the schools. With the opening of our schools, if we can get notice ahead of time, 5 to 7 days ahead of time that somebody in the school and to what level they are, that the infection is in there, that'll make a huge difference in the number of children and staff and schools that get infected or that have to close down.
I do have a question about schools. Are you going to be testing different toilets for different people? I mean, like, we have kids that normally use one set of restrooms, and then you have administrators that use another set of restrooms, and then you have maintenance people who may use another restroom. So if this was going to work well, it would probably be a situation where you train people to use, a certain group of people use certain.
You'd use the manhole outside.
Oh, it's a manhole.
Yes.
Oh, it's a combined. Oh my
Chairman Reyes,
God.
remember, you brought up a lot of good points that I want to respond to.
I thought you were going to pinpoint the wastewater a little better than that.
You can. That's why I put community in quotes. If you wanted to know if the administrators were getting sick, you could.
Well, when you use the porta potty, I figured, okay, well, that's just going to be without porta potty. You're not going to mix 3 porta potties in the same, but
Yeah, typically you would take the manhole and get the whole school mix. You bring up some very good points. One is that I didn't cover is this can evolve to other things, including possibly food safety pathogens as we go forward. Right now, COVID is the thing that needs addressing, but
the fact that it was used for polio, and it's
All right, Supervisor McLeod, you get a chance. If you don't, this is like school. You got to raise your hand or talk.
And it's been used for opioids in communities recently to figure out how opioid use is doing. Let's see, what were some of the other things I wanted to respond?
Can it identify where it comes from? I'm just kidding.
No, this is environmental testing. The timeliness is really key when you mention the schools and the harvest coming in. So this is why this would really kick it off, because we don't know for sure how long to get the equipment, get people hired. So if we can start now, we should be able to have it operational in September in time for when schools are trying to return in person and when the ag crews start.
So what were you going to say, Supervisor McLeod?
Oh,
No, he's
well-
had his hand up for a while.
okay. I'm next.
First, Mr. Chairman and Administrator Thorpe, I appreciate you putting this on the agenda today. I think it is important, as Supervisor Pancrasi mentioned, agriculture is our #1 industry. And to have this kind of a program in place where the workers would feel that they're being taken care of and that their safety is paramount, and that we do prevent something like happened in the meatpacking plants. I mean, just imagine work crews all across the county getting sick. And what does that do to the industry? So, again, I really appreciate you putting this on the agenda today, and I am very supportive of the $220,000 support to get the program up and running, and I trust that industry will respond and do their part. I know there are other grants that you'll be looking at, but I'm sure that we can find a way to make this happen. And then, Bill, we probably don't have the ability to make a quote-unquote donation, or
It would be a contract for
could
service.
we, I assume a contract with the health department, something like that?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if we decide
We'll
to go
figure out a
for it,
way to make it
We'll figure out a
happen.
way to make it happen, but is this not gonna be contingent upon you getting a grant from some other place that is gonna take you like 6 months or 8 months? I mean, I'd hate to try to put something quickly and then you have part of that funding be some process that's gonna take you 6 to 8 months.
I understand. So the way I see this working out, there's of course a lot of variables, but with this funding, we would have enough that we could set up the lab and hire people. So we could begin right away. And we have serious interest from the city of Yuma. We have serious interest from the state government. And I believe we have serious interest from Yuma Proving Grounds. So, and I know we have serious interest from the ag industry, because at all points as I've developed this, I've asked people, here's what we're thinking, shoot some holes in it. And they keep saying, no, this is a good idea, keep going forward with it. So there's really no doubt in my mind with this. Again, we can get it set up to where hopefully a month from now it's operational. So we're ready for the schools, ready for the ag industry. And worst case, if we got no additional funding per se, the people that get the testing could pay on a per test basis, because the lab will already be there, and people will be there.
It was noticeable that the majority of the cost was the $700 and some odd thousand that was for materials. So I suppose that if you put together the lab and set up the system, you could then turn around and said, okay, well, the industry needs to step up, and if you want this to work for you, you need to, pay for at least the materials. But
Yeah,
at
and
least
not just the industry, but the schools, the
well,
military
that's
base,
what
whoever wants to.
whatever industry that is. Okay.
One more comment. Our winter visitors are going to be coming in October. And if we have something like this in place, that would
foothills.
help them feel more secure in coming to Yuma, because we have this advanced program that in itself would.
Yeah, we'll put a checkpoint when they come in, and test them as they come in, so they
Yeah,
feel
really,
better
huh?
about bringing it from
But
Canada.
it would help them feel more secure about, coming to Yuma.
Yeah, Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Pancrasi, you're right. I mean, we're worried that winter visitors may choose not to come back this year.
Look, the
because
winter visitors, the last thing they're worried about is school. That's,
No, but
I
COVID,
understand what you're saying.
they are
I'm
worried
just
about
kidding
COVID.
when I
They
say
Worried
that.
about COVID.
this, I think,
Yeah, the COVID thing is,
this has the potential to make national news, that a place like Yuma County is implementing this to protect the workforce, to protect the schools, and that would help with the perception of people that want to come here.
we're gonna have to change your last name to Brinkley.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
For $220,000, you probably
Supervisor
will.
Simmons,
you know, with Yuma County, we've always been forward thinking
Yeah, well,
and
that's
ahead of
just
the ballgame, so many things, and this
Right.
is just another one that I think we need to get on board with. And
Okay, so we're looking at a $220,000 contract through either the health department or with the University of Arizona to set up basically set up a testing process that will allow us to monitor, if nothing else, or monitor the industry, the agricultural industry and the educational industry that could be also put into other services that are similar to that. It's an early warning system. Is that what we're basically going to call it? An early warning system.
And the municipalities.
And the
Chairman
municipalities
Reyes.
can participate. Any other, what do you guys want to do? I mean, sure.
Paul, the sampling, and when you start sampling, how often will the schools be sampled?
So it's just like Chairman Reyes was saying, to really have a perfect screen, I mean, you'd have to do it every day or maybe even every hour, to exaggerate. So this isn't going to be a perfect system. But what they've settled on at the West Center in Tucson is weekly testing.
Weekly?
Again, if you did it more often, you'd be more likely to catch something early and have more advance notice, but then you've got more logistics and more costs. So we're going to learn a lot as we go through this. I mean, I don't have all the answers. It may be that depending on what the results, this is going to give us data. That's one of the things the farm community has been telling me is, we know there's going to be repercussions about how we have to deal with this and everything else, but at least we'll have that data and we know more and we can react better. So we may find out that for some applications, they're going to want to test twice a week. Or some may only want to do every 2 weeks. I don't know, but we just had to pick something, and based on what their experience has been at the West Center, weekly testing seems to be about a good
balance.
And is that what U of A is going to do with their incoming students, is a weekly basis?
That's a really good question. I believe so.
Okay.
So, and it's, I read here, about $150 per test. Will that be charged?
So that depends on how much comes in. Again, overall, when you add it all up, it's a little over $1 million. if we were to get $1 million contribution, then we could offer the testing for free.
Oh, okay. Because, you know, I'm concerned, like, I mean, the schools and obviously the ag, I mean, those two would be top two for me.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
But if we were to charge $150 to the schools, you know, being that how their budget is, I mean, that would really kind of maybe deteriorate from some schools saying, well, no, you can't do it here because we don't have the money. So just.
Well, maybe we can get the state to put up some of the COVID.
That's what we're
Yeah, Chairman Ray, Supervisor Borges, that's my hope is, and I have reason to believe that will happen. It's certainly not guaranteed, as well as the city of Yuma and others. So as that amount grows, then that $150 charge can go down. Ideally, like I say, ideally to zero, and then we're providing it as a community service.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Supervisor McLeod?
Yeah, I'll add to that, Paul. I did speak with Caitlin in the governor's office, whose charge it is to help advise the governor on education. And she was very enthusiastic about this. And so they're looking at it. I mean, she doesn't have the final say, but I can tell you the level of enthusiasm was high because you can see the value to testing our schools and getting an advance warning if something were going on. So.
Are we set up, did we set up this meeting to take action? It
Yes.
says an action item, so what kind of action were we looking at?
So, Mr.
A
Chairman,
commitment?
I would move that we
Commit?
budget $220,000 in support of the COVID-19 early warning workforce community protection project with
And-
U of A.
Would it,
I would like to second that.
okay, so it would be, just to make sure that it meets legal, because I want to make sure that legal doesn't have a problem with this. This is going to be a motion to enter into a contract with the U of A for an early warning system that, early warning system that the county would participate in, right? We're not donating money, we're not sponsoring something in terms of just ourselves. We're basically contracting for an early warning system.
Mr. Chairman,
Private
there is a
program.
motion in your agenda item if you wanted to look at that wording and then fill in the blanks. But it includes subject to development and execution of an IGA or a contract between Yuma County and the University of Arizona.
Okay, so where is it? I didn't see it here.
It's on
the
your
agenda.
computer.
It's on the agenda. Sorry, I was looking at the packet. that
Oh,
you guys
okay.
gave
You know
me.
what? I'll withdraw my motion and restate it then, Mr. Chairman.
Well, don't, go ahead.
Move to support U of A Yuma COVID-19 Early Warning Protection Project through general fund contingency in the amount of $220,000 effective August 13th, 2020, subject to development and execution of an IGA between Yuma County
I'm not gonna.
and the University of Arizona.
I don't know why we need to use emergency or contingency funds. Why don't we set up a budget item, line item for it? I mean, we certainly, I don't want to use 220,000 out of the budget that we already reduced. That contingency budget was reduced this year to make the budget work.
The contingency is where the CARES Act money flowed to.
Well, then,
So you move it from contingency into a line item in the budget. So that's your budget authority, is the money that was budgeted in contingency. So you move it from that to a specific line item for professional services with U of A.
can't we use the health department?
That's an alternative, that then you would change the
That's what
wording
I'm
of the
talking
motion.
about. The health department receives some CARES money, a lot of CARES money. I mean,
They got some specific grant money for CARES.
Just for specific things, though.
I know, but I mean.
But this is a recommended motion.
Well, I get the recommended motion, but we make the motions. This is a recommended motion. That's why I said, let's make sure that legally we can do something like this. And if this is a recommended motion, I have a problem with using up half. How much is the contingency fund? If you could,
That's what Gil's here for.
oh, Hill is here. Now, I don't have a problem supporting the project. I mean, I'm giving that. I just want to find out if there's another method we could use some of this money other than
Well,
depleting
this
the
is where the
contingency.
CARES Act money went.
Well, that CARES Act money went everywhere. I mean, we used it to pay, I mean, I don't want to get into what we used the CARES money to pay for, but it was supposed to release funds into the reserve. Now, if you'd asked me where you get it from, you get it from the reserve.
That's what the contingency means, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, well then, don't call it the contingency, call it the reserve, because contingency to me means the money that we set aside, 400 and some odd $1,000 that we have for contingency. Now, unless we're gonna replenish that fund, if we replenish that fund, I wouldn't have a problem, but I don't wanna get it, we don't know what a contingency is. This is not a contingency.
Mr.
is
Chairman,
a-
members
this
of
is
the
a new
board,
project.
Gil Villegas, CFO, during the adoption of our budget, we usually set up 3 levels of contingency/reserves.
Okay,
We have our board contingency, which this year is $326,000. We have our reserves according to policy, which is the emergency 15%, and we have our stabilization policy reserve, which is 5%. Total is $19,342,000.
yeah, let's stop right there. When you call it a contingency, I always think you're calling it a contingency from the board contingency, because that's
No.
what we make a decision on. If it comes from another contingency, in other words, if it comes from
This
the
is general
reserve,
fund contingency.
all right, so it's not the board
Not
contingency.
the board.
All right, got it, it's fine.
Thank you.
All right, Gil,
We still
thank you.
have 320,000.
Yeah, we still have 320,000 in case we have a contingency that the board needs to address, right? Okay,
Mhm.
good.
I
I'm fine
second the
with it.
motion.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to do just what he read before, right, with the clarification. Any more discussion on this item? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 You know, Mr. Porches,
just
you
a
may
comment.
want to abstain from voting on this one,
I don't
because
get
you,
any- I don't work for the U of A, I work for the extension.
the extension's not part of U of A.
I thought about that.
Look, I'm trying
But
to
you know
cover,
what? I
I'm trying
thought
to
about
cover
that.
your butt, you
But,
know?
Well, I mean, I
You
can
see correct,
abstain,
isn't it?
I mean, I don't,
Oh, no,
I can
look,
abstain, I'm
let's
not
get
gonna
legal.
work for Paul.
Yeah, let's just clear this out for, because legal is here, and I think he can give us an opinion on this. I work for a nonprofit, right? So I don't, I get paid by the nonprofit, right? And whenever something happens that has to do with this, I have to be careful and abstain from it. And it's really, at this particular point in time, I think it's more as an issue of making sure you don't run into a problem with somebody just questioning that. So in my zeal to try to protect them, maybe you can define that a little better. You work for the extension, right? For the
Well,
extension?
it's basically the U of A, but,
All right. So-
there's 2 parts to,
Well, let's,
but,
let's,
I'll abstain, just to keep it, I mean,
Thank you.
Well, it's your decision, but,
Yeah,
I'd say that you be on the safe side on a situation where the votes are there.
I mean, it.
It's not gonna mean anything.
I'll-
If this was a close call, I'd say that you declare your remote conflict of interest and vote. But you declare the remote conflict of interest anyway, just to make sure you cover your legal grounds. I've done this for years, and it's always been a little dicey, but the point of the conflict of interest clause is to make sure that people disclose that. It's not really necessarily a matter of, you make the decision whether you think you have a conflict or not, but you disclose it anyway so that the public gets to know that you have some link to the organization. So if you wanted to vote on this, what I would do
No,
is I would declare that I somehow work for the university, but I don't get any direct benefits, so I'm voting on it, if it need be.
I'll abstain, and just to clarify things, I mean, just kind of like the county, I mean, I know the county has different departments, that's the same thing with the university, and a lot of the departments with the university get paid through or soft money from other companies that donate money. So it's in different, I mean, Paul.
Levels of levels.
Will hire his people, and I work with him and other things, but he doesn't pay me directly. So.
Okay.
But and I would say just a comment about Paul. Paul works for the university, but also he has a board from the ag industry here, and the board are the top notch, the owners of many companies. So when he says that his board is giving him direction, they want this. They're looking for it to something happen. So
Right.
And we can help,
Okay.
so.
He has all the support from the ag and industry.
Are we okay, Bill?
Yes, I think Supervisor Porches declared his,
Remote.
Abstain.
he abstained.
Okay, good. So the vote is 4 positives and 1 abstention. Right? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
members?
It's a crappy project, but
Don't-
it may work.
very funny.
It may work.
You've been waiting to say that all through this, haven't you?
I've been waiting till the end to tell you this. Well, anyway, there being, wait a minute, one last thing, and I don't know if it fits within the budget, within the motion here, because you didn't put anything general in there, a general discussion of anything. But I do want to let you know that I'll be looking forward to something having to do with broadband for the next, in the call, I could have done this on the call to the public, actually, and just give you directions. I mean, I want Paul, I like Paul, what's his last name?
Melcher.
Melcher. Paul, I only known him for 20, 30 years. Paul Melcher to do a little bit of research and the possibility that the county can get involved in broadband and Wi-Fi and internet services in the outlying areas. It's become very obvious that that the county is not really set up to handle the load factors that are now coming into play with kids, getting, doing schooling from home, and some of the outlying areas. I get a lot of calls about, the Wi-Fi, the internet's no good. My kids drop off.
Well,
especially in some of the-
agriculture's become such a big part of it too.
Yeah, so just and I know that we've been going to all these meetings with the National Association of Counties about broadband, but we've been talking about it for a long time. I think right now it's become one of those issues that have come to the forefront. So please, see if you can get something in the next agenda for it. Not the next one. But other than that. Well, I don't know. It's not in the agenda. I think we're going to run into problems. I just want directions for the next meeting to discuss it. Yeah, you can come back to the next meeting. Just don't bring in a PowerPoint presentation. All right, there being no other businesses to attend to, this meeting is fully adjourned before somebody else brings anything up. Thank you very much.